Before this story begins, hit subscribe and turn on notifications right now, because stories like this, raw, human, and impossible to forget, are the reason this channel exists, and you won't want to miss the next one. On a rain-soaked night in a forgotten stretch of Highway America, a pregnant woman pushed open the dented steel door of a biker bar called the Iron Serpent, a place where trouble went to drink and secrets went to die, and the music screeched to a halt as every leather-clad head turned toward her trembling silhouette, her hair plastered to her face, her hands shaking as she cradled her belly. Because no one walked into that bar by accident. Not women, not families, especially not someone carrying a child. And yet there she was, eyes wide with fear and determination, whispering a single sentence that would change every life in that room forever. "Please, I need help." And the bartender, a scarred man named Hank, who hadn't felt surprise in 20 years, slowly set down his glass, noticing the bruise blooming along her arm, the dried blood on her sleeve, the way she flinched when thunder cracked. And around her the bikers exchanged looks, men known in 3 states for violence, men who had buried brothers and burned bridges, men who had sworn never to get involved again, because involvement always cost more than it gave. But something about her presence cracked the room open. Maybe it was the unborn child. Maybe it was the way she stood her ground despite clearly being hunted. And when Hank finally asked her who she was running from, she answered with a name that sucked the air out of the bar. A name tied to a private security company with government contracts. A man with money, lawyers, and a reputation for making people disappear. And she said he was the father of her child, that he wanted the baby gone, that he had already tried. Once that she escaped a burning car with nothing but the clothes she wore, and now she had nowhere else to go, because the police were paid off. The shelters were compromised, and everyone she trusted was either silent or dead. And for a long moment, no one moved, until the biggest biker in the room, a man called Crow, stood up slowly, his chair scraping like a warning shot, and said something no one expected. "You don't touch a woman carrying life." And with that sentence, the Iron Serpent became a sanctuary, doors locked, curtains drawn, phones confiscated, and the woman, her name was Lily, was given water, food, a place to sit, and for the first time in days she stopped shaking. But peace never comes without a price, and outside the bar headlights appeared, black SUVs rolling like predators, because the man she ran from didn't panic. He calculated, and he sent men who didn't ask questions, men who believed power was permission, and when the first gunshot shattered the window, the bikers didn't hesitate. They moved like muscle memory, flipping tables, dragging Lily to the back, barricading doors, and what followed wasn't a bar fight but a siege, glass and wood exploding, rain mixing with blood on the floor. And through it all, Lily heard Crow shouting orders, protecting her like a brother he never had. And when silence finally fell, the SUVs were gone, leaving behind smoke, broken bodies, and one dying attacker who whispered a truth before his last breath, that Lily wasn't just a problem. She was leverage, because the baby carried evidence, genetic proof tied to a crime buried years ago, a massacre disguised as an accident. And suddenly the bikers realized they weren't just defending a woman. They were standing at the edge of something bigger, something that could burn down an empire, and Lily admitted everything then, how she had been a researcher, how she discovered what the father of her child had done, how he thought killing her would erase the past. But she survived, and the baby inside her was the last piece he couldn't destroy. And as dawn broke, the bikers made a choice that sealed their fate. They wouldn't run. They wouldn't hand her over. They would finish what was started, using their own network, their own codes, calling in favors from people who lived off the grid, veterans, hackers, journalists who still believed truth mattered. And days turned into weeks as Lily hid among them, her belly growing, bonds forming in the strangest place, stories shared over coffee instead of whiskey, men who had sworn off family learning how to assemble cribs and heat bottles. And just when it felt like maybe, just maybe, they could win, betrayal struck from within. A biker named Mason, deep in debt, sold their location for a promise of freedom, and the attack that followed was worse than the first, coordinated, brutal, forcing the Iron Serpent to burn to the ground as the bikers evacuated Lily through a tunnel dug decades earlier for smuggling, emerging miles away under the cover of night. But Mason didn't get far, and his betrayal cost him everything. And as Lily went into early labor during the escape, surrounded by engines idling and sirens wailing in the distance, Crow held her hand, telling her to breathe, telling her she wasn't alone, and in the back of a stolen ambulance, a child was born into chaos, screaming with life, a girl. And in that moment, something shifted, because you can't unsee a beginning like that. You can't ignore what you're willing to die for once you've held it in your arms. And the final act came not with guns, but with exposure. Documents leaked, DNA confirmed, journalists unleashed. And the powerful man who thought himself untouchable was dragged into the light, his empire collapsing under the weight of truth, arrests made, charges filed. And when it was over, Lily stood in a quiet field watching the sun rise, her daughter asleep against her chest, the bikers beside her, bruised but unbroken, knowing they could never go back to who they were before. And Crow, the man everyone feared, wiped tears from his eyes as he realized that sometimes the hardest men are built to protect the softest things. And the story ends not in a biker bar or a courtroom, but on an open road, engines humming, a future uncertain but chosen, because one night a pregnant woman walked into a biker bar asking for help, and a group of men the world had written off remembered what it meant to be human, proving that family isn't always blood. Sometimes it's the people who stand between you and the darkness when you have nowhere else to run.